Mohammed Abu-Nimer. He's a professor of peace and conflict resolution at American University. Thank you for being with us on the program, Professor. I want to touch on three different elements that came out of that presser earlier with Trump and Netanyahu. First and foremost, Gaza. Trump says Israel has lived up to the agreement, which isn't true. What does that tell us about where the rest of the so-called ceasefire deal is headed to?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I think, I'm not going to be very different from your second correspondent, Al-Qasim. I think what we've seen this afternoon is really another round between Netanyahu and Trump, in which Netanyahu successfully managing to either manipulate or provide the persuasion to persuade Trump to basically provide him with a lifeline and provide him with further support and the green light to continue and control the areas in Gaza without necessarily placing any pressure on him to hold on, to be held accountable for, as mentioned earlier, for the 1,000 and more violation, for the 400 people that were killed during the ceasefire, and for any of the conditions that Israel was supposed to meet, the opening of the Rafah gate or borders. All of these things Netanyahu was not held accountable for, and contrary to all the speculation before, what we've seen again and again for the past 2 years and for 1 year at least under the Trump administration, Netanyahu comes to town and there is speculation about tension, and then Netanyahu leaves with basically pat on his shoulder, continue to drag your feet, no accountability, no pressure, and even promising him with another pardon, another promise for the pardon. And this time even he offered Trump the Israel Peace Prize. And every time there are those attempts to keep the attention of Trump on the Netanyahu saving his political life in Israel.
The second is, of course, the occupied West Bank, and Trump said that they don't agree on issues of settler violence there. But what is the U.S. administration doing to stop this decades-long problem that has only gotten worse over the past 2 years?
Again, I think, it's the same principle where I don't think, we should have any major expectation from this administration to place serious pressure on Netanyahu's government to stop, withdraw from Gaza, or to stop all the human rights abuse or the ethnic cleansing that they're doing in the West Bank and the occupied territory. What they have done in the past year equal and over 5 years ago, a total of 5 years of settlement. They expanded settlement, they destroyed houses, they basically displaced over 40,000 Palestinians in the West Bank itself between the different cities, and they are not held accountable. And the settlers, which is internationally and globally known, recognized for being brutal and violating Palestinian human rights, on this specific issue, actually, there is consensus globally that they are violating and doing really massive damage to Palestinian daily life there. And Trump is not convinced with that. So I'm not sure that we should have our expectation that this administration will ever place a public explicit pressure on this Israeli government to change its policy for expansion and apartheid.
What about the comments they made on the neighboring countries, Lebanon, Iran? They don't seem to be happy with the two, and Israel is calling for a peaceful border with Syria, but continues to occupy land there.
Yeah, I think, beside the positive praise of President Erdogan and his role in on the change of the regime, you got Syria is an agreed upon issue between Israel and the U.S. With Lebanon, I think Trump was hesitant to provide Netanyahu with what he wants, and he tried to find some excuses there or justification for why he is not as enthused or eager to give Netanyahu what he wants. And he said the Lebanese government is still, in a crisis, and they have lots of problems, and they are really in bad situation. But at the same time, he kept waving the stick, like with Iran and Hezbollah, Hezbollah and threatening them again. I think this entire discourse of threat and weaponization and attack and military threat is really the stick that Netanyahu is using in his domestic politics. And this is what Trump gave him. He gave him more assurances. Yes, continue with your threat to Iran. Yes, continue with your threat to Hezbollah and the Lebanese. And the American public, the American military is in your support. And I'm doubtful, by the way, I'm doubtful about all the speculation of the behind-the-scene pressure. There's always behind-the-scene pressure, but the question, what would be the result of this? And based on the past year and a half of Trump here, at least a year and 2 months, we did not see much pressure giving a result of a change on the ground. And unfortunately, land on the pessimistic side on how much we can expect from this administration to pressure Netanyahu.
Okay, Professor Mohammed Abu-Nimer, thank you so much for being with us here on TRT World.